889-5600. Goldilocks, Chicago's premier locksmith doors and security systems company since 1981.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this hour of the Shaun Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
The Republic to which it stands. How does it stand? Well, you got 535 political whores who can adapt to any lie, all for the name of money. 535 people make up the House and the Senate. You got a president and a vice president. And then you have bureaucrats that are loyal to the system. It would explain why it doesn't feel like a representative republic, but it feels more like a duopoly, a corruption. And who exactly is the we? We're going to discuss this and so much more with somebody who is an award-winning journalist, senior congressional reporter for the Epoch Times, based in Washington, D.C. I hear he takes showers like Cher in Silkwood and still can't get clean after a day at the Congress. Nathan Worcester, how are you?
Not too bad, Shaun. Not too bad. I try to keep it clean, but yeah, it's a very swampy day here in Washington.
Oh, it's Caligula for nerds. People who were too ugly to make it in soap operas and figured, let's get lucky with a bunch of girls that we could pay off with other people's money. I mean, it's just gross at this point. But it is the beauty and the silver lining as I see it. It is really exposed as a duopoly. I mean, you've got the mannequin from Men's Warehouse, who his whole career was following Mitch McConnell around and telling him your fly's open. And he's now the leader of the Senate, John Thune. And John Thune keeps the Senate in session so that Trump cannot do any recess appointments to offset the 265 loyal Marxist mafia Democrats who are pretending to be judges. We've got this whole thing going on with FISA. I've got 6 congressional Republicans that flip to make sure that 350,000 temporary protected status Haitians, like the one in Fort Myers who just beat the woman with a hammer, can stay here. So there's a lot of moving parts that are going on, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. And on the Haitian issue, I managed to catch Sri Thanadar, if you recall him from Michigan. He was exultant. He was celebrating the fact that all these Republicans flipped on the issue, which is interesting to see. That's maybe what bipartisanship looks like in Washington, where just enough Republicans flip on an issue that you don't have, for example, anyone in leadership saying you should vote a particular way. But you end up with a result that apparently Washington is happy with.
Now, Nathan, one thing that's interesting about that particular fellow that you mentioned, how do you say his name again?
Thanadar, Sri Thanadar.
So I grew up in Chicagoland area in the 70s and 80s in a very ethnic neighborhood. And there was a copper whose name was Guy Messina. And he had this dog on his head that he wanted you to believe was hair. And if you looked at it the wrong way, he would beat you about the head, neck, breast, and chest area with a billy club. So nobody even pointed out, that looks ridiculous. But that was the 70s. Now it's 2026. What the hell is on that freak's head? Can you tell me?
Yeah, there's a lot of high fashion everywhere in the Capitol. I can tell you right now, there's always something new to see, to experience. There in the Senate subway. I feel like I shouldn't say any more, Shaun, but you can only imagine.
Yes, I don't want you to get in trouble at all. But what was really disheartening is to see the Republicans who know better, the Salazars, I want to say Mike Lawler, but he's always been a scumbag to me. But these guys who ran, it reminds me of the Tea Party stab in the backs in Illinois, who said they were going to fight to rip out Obamacare. They all got rich. They all got cushy lobbyist jobs, and they double-crossed the people who trusted them. That's exactly what I see is happening here. But they're a little bit more worried about it now because they understand, to me, what Trump represents is the third party that nobody talks about. And when you look at it from your vantage point, and you see what you've seen all these years, and you see the bills that are passed and the ones that aren't, and the parliamentary trickery that keeps the system running. It really is kind of an illusion of a republic, isn't it?
That's a great point. Yeah, I have two things to say to that. One being it's definitely worth tracking the Dignity Act, this push that would include, yes, something like amnesty, something like a path to citizenship, which, again, seems to run contrary to what the president ran on, what Americans voted for when they sent Republicans into the House and Senate. In addition to that, with this FISA issue, with this Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act surveillance, which remains, in the case of queries, warrantless for Americans, something that raises Fourth Amendment issues. It turns out that no matter what happens, the FISA court already managed to get year-long extensions for certifications. So, again, we had it punted down the road a little bit. We might see something extended. Perhaps it will be amended. But no matter what happens, the system is going to continue quietly. Just a few blocks from me, actually. That's where the FISA court is.
And the funniest thing about this FISA court is this is the absolute weaponized bureaucracy that was used in the false allegations against the Russian hoax with Trump and anybody that even said hello to him or was going to work for him. This is the same organization that was used to surveil, I believe, Papadopoulos. Wasn't he a victim of this abuse as well? Or so many others. There's so many abuses. And you know what's fascinating about this FISA court? They never investigated any of Hunter Biden's businesses, or any of the assets of Hunter Biden, or any of the people that have worked for Democrats, from Barack Obama to the Duchess of Chafington when she was selling uranium to the Russians. It's amazing how incompetent they are when it's the Democrat politician who is in charge of the government versus the Republican, isn't it?
It's going to be interesting for me to see. With 702, I just want to walk you through this. If you weren't paying attention in the early hours of the morning today, in the wee small hours, you didn't watch what again is one of those Washington moments play out where, because there was this pressure from House Republicans, from people like Chip Roy and others, to extend some sort of protections, address backdoor searches, address things like the warrants, everything pretty much that people have been complaining about with this court, you had something floated that said it had a warrant requirement, but as it turns out, the warrant requirement did not apply to the querying, which, now I don't want to get too technical, not too in the weeds, but it didn't amount to much of anything. And so a lot of Republicans, they held the line on that one. A lot of Democrats are also opposed to some of those FISA Fourth Amendment abuses. In fairness, there's a law that Mike Lee is leading in the Senate that is aimed at coming up with some sort of congressional solution. Not easy to get Congress to actually pass anything, but there was a very good chance that we would have had a headline that they managed to get something like a clean extension, and more or less sleep-deprived Republicans voted for it, despite what they said. That didn't play out, and so now we're going to have to watch and see, is there going to be a change to FISA? Are we going to see some of the warrant protections that people have been advocating for? But it was kind of amazing to watch on social media as it was first dropped, and then people reading it realized exactly what was going on.
So you know what's funny, Nathan, is the way it right? They work so hard. They stayed up at night. And you know, when you listen, when the people that listen to my show, these are the doers, right? These are the third of Americans that pay the taxes, that have their own businesses or work for people who do. These are the small business people, right? And the reality of what we all live with. Everyone, I don't know a person that sleeps past 7. I don't think I do. I don't know anybody that goes to bed before 12:30. Sometimes I fall asleep at 10:30, but I wake up at 2:30 from my old habits of wondering if I'm bankrupt or not. And it's fascinating to watch them complain about working. In all of your years that you've seen, what exactly does a senator or a congressman do, say Monday at 8:30 to 6:30? Because I'm looking at Ro Khanna. He apparently trades thousands and thousands of time. He has insider traded profits of $170 million in 7 years. So what exactly do congressmen and senators do when their definition or my definition or your definition of work on a daily basis?
Well, I'm thinking back now to before he dropped out of the governor's race, back when he was just promoting himself. Eric Swalwell posted a photo to social media of himself, cool, emerging, saying, well, I've got all these days off, and it's Trump's fault somehow. But actually, if you look at his record over the past Congress, he has missed scores of votes. He is someone who has been absentee. So when it comes to what's happening in Congress, a lot of the time, some of it is the nature of our system. You talk to staffers, you talk to people involved in it. A lot of the time they are going to spend their afternoons trying to get money for their reelection campaign. They're going to be talking to lobbyists. They're going to be talking to people plugged into D.C. And so sometimes, it seems kind of strange as though the actual business that Congress should be engaged in, things like passing budgets, passing laws, that seems to have fallen by the wayside.
Now, you have an incredibly unique position, right? Because you're decent. Epoch Times are a wonderful outlet. Decent people work there. And you're trying to get the information out to the public. And I'm wondering how you see the manipulation of the nation's character. And I say this to you because when we talk about Swalwell, it is fascinating to look back at this scallywag scoundrel's true history. He was caught banging a Chinese spy 15 years ago, 14 years. They knew it. Got him. Dead to rights. The penalty was he was put on the Intel Committee. I mean, to manipulate the nation character of outrage and disgust, I think treason is a lot more disgusting than what every one of these rats have done since Chris Dodd and Barney Frank teamed up to create the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Are you amazed at how easy it is to manipulate the nation's character and outrage?
I think it's amazing. Just I'm not that old, but even watching in the last few decades, how much things like the, I think, understandable reaction to moral turpitude scandals, and this applies to both sides, of course. But when you see then in the attempt to address this, basically Republicans and Democrats horse trading. Okay, Swalwell for Gonzalez, and we'll leave Mills, we'll leave McCormick up there. That's all right. It seems as though we're just caught up in like a team sport basically. And wait a minute, nobody's stepping back and wondering like, you're going to say great things about, oh, this is a terrible culture at the Capitol. There's this predation, but no, we're just seeing this kind of weaponized in the same way that everything else gets weaponized. It's very sad, and again, I don't think it sets a good example for Americans in general, but especially if I were a kid looking at this and saw this is what the people who are representing me in Washington, this is how they live their lives. And again, I would say this goes for both sides. There's a lot of immorality.
The least among us are the ones who seek political office. I've come to the conclusion, and sometimes the best, but the best are always the one that never really get it. They have a hard time raising money. And when you talk about these parliamentary procedures and trickery and the way in which, even in the city governments and the state governments in Illinois, I mean, it's fascinating to watch how these parties protect themselves from any real change, any real people of character. And it's always the same recycled scumbags that work their way up in like my mafia controlled state of Illinois. It's fascinating to watch. But one of the things I think that's changing that is the feeling among the young people who are looking at this, who have been victims of this abuse. These kids who were in high school and college, and in some cases grade school, during the abuse of the Biden administration, I think these are the kids that are really going to change the world. And I think that what we're living through right now, with so much of the success in 15 months of the Trump administration, when you look at the border, when you look at the destruction of just the $9 trillion out the door for COVID, that in 4 years, Joe Biden, $9 trillion on debt. If you look at how he's pulled back on the fraud of the eco agenda and the subsidizing and the rest of it, I think we are at the beginning of what could be the complete change of trajectory of what Washington, D.C. hopes will continue forever. And I get the feeling they're just trying to wait Trump out. I don't think they understand the pulse of the people. And you are writing it. Epoch Times is informing people. Are you seeing a change in the people who are coming to you? Are you seeing younger demographics? It's fascinating when I get the stuff that we can get from my show. I think you're seeing a bigger push for information by younger people than arguably at any time since Vietnam. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think there's a sense of disaffection. I'm not sure how many people are motivated by this specifically, but for me, realizing just in the last few years how much the national debt has exploded, how normalized that is, and what that is going to mean for people who are, let's say 18 today, what they are going to be expected to pay, how they're going to be expected to accept. For many of them, it seems like a country where expectations have been diminished, a country where generally it's hard to get a house as a young person. It raises the potential, I think, for change. And I hope that people choose the right vehicle for that, and people decide, young people act in such a way as to address these foundational issues, because, goodness knows, there's a lot of directions in which young people who care passionately about politics, there's lots of directions they can go.
Oh, absolutely. And when you talk about, Barack Obama's the greatest joke in Chicagoland history. And everybody knew he was an absolute buffoon who was surrounded by him when he was in state government and the rest of it, and scandal-ridden. But when you think about just the national debt, he was elected, and some half-assed gangster in the first ward used to make his car payment because he was a bust-out. He couldn't make any money. So he would borrow his car payment from these connected guys in the first ward. He had a 532 credit rating. He never succeeded at anything. And you think since he was elected, we've added $30 trillion to debt. His administration, $9 trillion in 8 years. Joe Biden, $9 trillion in 4. And that doesn't, when I say that, people go, oh, the math. Well, the obligation of the way in which they pass these bills and the massive increases, the baseline budgeting and all the rest of it. But it took us 236 years to acquire $9 trillion. We've added 30 since Barack Obama. If kids can't understand the corruption and the simple math of the definition of failure, then we are lost. But I think they are going to realize it's intended to make them slaves the way they do in these Democrat areas like Chicago, like New York, like New Jersey, like Minnesota. And they're trying to normalize the scandal of theft of the public money. I think they're losing. I feel like they're losing. Do you get that feeling in Washington?
My hope is that we see, as you said, I think there's a big contingent of the American people who want to, at the very least, be informed, try to learn what is actually happening. And so just, again, looking at the last few days, watching the drama over FISA, watching what's happening right now with Iran, the battle over war powers, and seeing, on some of these issues, it's clear a lot of this comes down to issues like turf. A lot of this comes down to, one of these hundreds of representatives or senators, they might have a particular reason to want to maintain the status quo, and just seeing how bad that is for the American people. I have to say it's. I think it's better to be hopeful than it is to be pessimistic. But there's a lot of drag. There is a lot of forcing the system to maintain itself.
And you have to be a realist, right? I mean, you can control only what you do in your areas. So that's funny to watch the migration from these once great areas, like my own, and the businesses now business desert. You see buildings in the Loop that are selling for 87% less than they sold for 7 years ago. It's fascinating to watch. I mean, can you imagine the mindset of the guy taking the 87% loss? Did we find a moron yet that'll pay anything for it? Yeah, but he's offering you 13% of what you paid. Sell it. Get rid of it. I mean, that's what's happening. And you see the migration to these these now growing, this boom belt, 11 states, $9 trillion in economic growth since COVID. And Florida is going to be very interesting. That's the one I picked. But you have this Salazar, right? There's two from Florida that flipped on the immigration and normalizing immigration and that voted against Trump. But the two from Florida, Salazar and Jimenez, they are going to be an indicator. And Byron Donalds, who was in the lead for the governors, he jumped on this and took a massive hit. So these are going to be interesting races to watch, and I know where I'm going to watch them is at the Epoch Times. But these are going to be indicators. If now you see these Republicans where the people in these districts say, you backstab me, I don't care who wins. Because to me, I think that what separates us from the people who want to steal other people's money is that we recognize there is no we. And if you betray us, you're worse than somebody who opposes us. And I think this is going to be a very big midterm. I don't think the Democrats are going to win. I don't think there's that many Americans that want to be communists, that want to be mafia members. And I think if the Republicans hold, it changes everything as the Republicans that flipped are thrown out. This is really big, this upcoming election, isn't it?
And I would just add Mario Diaz-Balart, another Florida Republican who ended up flipping on this issue. Yeah, I think that the next few months, I would be very closely scrutinizing what we're hearing from those Republicans on the immigration issue, what we're seeing from the DHS under Markwayne Mullin, because, here in D.C., I will say my sources within the administration, I'm hearing good things. I'm hearing people, for the most part, politicals who really are hoping to implement the agenda again from 2024. On the one hand, as you point out, the border has been substantially closed. We're seeing some changes, some even sluggishness on things like the H-1B visa. But, if anything, I would say the younger people that I know, the people who are in Washington, D.C., working for the Trump administration, most of them are pedal to the metal, so to speak, and they're just hoping to continue that.
Sure they are. Well, the losers love to lie, and it's fascinating to watch how much Trump, a guy who never ran for dog catcher, think about it. First time he runs as president, he wins. And now you see the success in 15 months, and this whole thing in the Middle East is going to come out fantastic in the market rebound. I'm predicting good things, and I will watch them be written about at the Epoch Times. Is it .com or .org?
It's .com.
Nathan Worcester, thank you, and thank everybody at the Epoch Times for always giving us a little optimism in a world full of propaganda. So thank you.
Oh, I will, Shaun. Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you very much. We'll be back with your calls and comments.
What if everything you've been told about government, health care, poverty, energy, and even science is a carefully constructed lie? In Shaun Thompson's new book, What If It's All a Lie? Shaun Thompson dismantles the myths at the core of modern America. This is the book the ruling class